Hi, welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. I am at the Expo 2015 in Milan, and in this feature I wanted to talk about the idea of intercultural communication. And intercultural communication refers basically the idea that we use our experiences to translate from one culture to another. And so the first example of this that I found at the Expo would be these mini passports. And we discovered these about, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours into our journey. And the idea is that you go and you actually get stamps from all the countries. And so this is one, great example, I think, of how you can use the idea of intercultural communication at a World Expo. Well, so I'm walking through the main thoroughfare at the Expo 2015 Milan, and just trying to get from one pavilion to the next. And as you might expect with an event that lasts only 6 months and expects 10 million people, really crowded. So one of the challenges certainly at an Expo is just getting around and trying to find something to do where you don't have to wait an hour in line. But one of the things that was interesting as I was waiting in line was I heard an announcement, which you're going to hear here actually, on the automated system. Not sure what the announcement is since I don't speak Italian, but the announcement before that I heard was speaking about world peace and harmony, and there was some event focused on world peace today. And I think it's one of those things that the optimism, I think, that's inherent in an expo, even with the waning of the expo tradition, as I've been talking about, the optimism, I think, is this notion that you can have this intercultural communication and that people can share in cultural differences as opposed to going to war and committing genocide and ethnocide and so forth. So I think it's for me that spirit of optimism of the expo that maintains, or that suggests its significance in terms of maintaining the expo and not thinking to ourselves as nations that we shouldn't participate in expos. But now I'm going to take a look at the China Pavilion, so be sure to check that out in another video I'll be offering.
Okay, since I just talked about the China Pavilion, here is an image that I took during my visit, and I wanted to use this as an opportunity to think about one of the barriers or hurdles that exist, perhaps in terms of this idea of intercultural communication. Again, to review the idea, if we're going to suggest that we can use the uniqueness of cultures and what they have to offer to other cultures as a means of connecting with often diverse cultures or nations, there could be noticeable challenges. And I think we see this at the Expo, as I have mentioned in other videos. As an example here, think of the money that's reflected in China in its ability to create a pavilion on this scale. And then we see some of the smaller pavilions and what they are able to offer, in this case the Pavilion of Haiti. So I think it is a contradiction in terms of what is presented at the Expo, given the fact that the ability to present an attractive and extravagant pavilion is a reflection of the fact of differences in economics and overall geopolitical forms of power. So I think it offers an opportunity, but certainly a clear challenge in terms of thinking about the future of the Expo. And this is another example of one of the mini clusters. Again, compare the very small, it's not even a pavilion, the cabinet, the stand here of the nation of Belize. Compare that with what China was able to offer. What I'm trying to suggest here is that there is an inequality on the surface presented at the Expo. So I think if there is a possibility of any form of intercultural communication, it is certainly challenged by the major differences in power that we note at the Expo. And this has been something that has remained with the Expo tradition since the earliest versions of it in terms of the Crystal Palace. Now, in a different video, I talked about the issue of cultural essence and how it's communicated at the Expo. I made a suggestion in that video that perhaps if more nations moved away from literal iconic representations of the nation, of the culture, in terms of the Expo pavilions, and instead used here, as we see with the UK in this wonderful beehive technological architectural structure. Instead, if nations use these more abstract and less representational approaches to the design of their pavilions and their spaces, we perhaps would see more opportunity for intercultural dialogue. And I make this statement because I believe if you're just showing the grandeur of the nation, if you're just propping up this idea of how amazing your nation, your culture, your political system, your economy, your folkways are, that doesn't offer very many opportunities for other nations to join in any sort of dialogue. And then I would also suggest, where's there room for critique? I think one of the things that you have to do, and certainly I saw this in the case of the Pavilion of South Korea, is put yourself out there a bit and challenge yourself. Try to make amends. Try to challenge notions out there that suggest that the nation is powerful and its cultures are superior in an ethnocentric sense to all other cultures in the world. We certainly saw this in the case of the Pavilion of the Vatican and overall the Pope's message, in which he, in a sense, critiqued the Expo for not offering more visions of dealing with world crises, for creating communication between cultures, and for dealing with issues like starvation and poverty throughout the world. And in this image here, I'm trying to reflect on another side of intercultural communication. I'm suggesting here, and these are two slides for an upcoming talk on the World Expo tradition I'm focusing on or conducting. And what I'm trying to suggest here is, could you imagine if in the case of North and South Korea, the two pavilions were side by side? What sort of opportunities for any sort of dialogue or exchange would be possible? So as touring the Expo, it occurred to me that certain nations that I would visit, and down the way I'd visit another nation that was in high opposition for political, cultural reasons with that other nation, it presented a contrast for me, a bit of irony as I thought about the idea of the dialogues that were not occurring between certain nations. So at the top here, the US and Iran, at the bottom there, Palestine and Israel. So again, other perhaps missed opportunities in terms of thinking about the type of dialogue that could occur between nations who are in competition with one another. And so as I close on this point, I think it offers us opportunities to think about the future of the Expo and also of the traditions of intercultural communication. And then I would suggest that in terms of the future of the Expo tradition, there are incredible opportunities present to create more lasting and meaningful dialogue between cultures in terms of this notion of intercultural communication. At the same time, I feel that some of the standards of the Expo tradition, including this notion of presenting the grandeur, the power, the sense of right that each nation, political entity, or culture has at the Expo through its iconic architecture, pavilions, technology, and so forth, that this, in a sense, could be a setback in terms of creating greater opportunities in the future for the sorts of intercultural communication that the Expo might promise but fail to deliver on fully. So certainly much to reflect on today here as we look at the issue of intercultural communication at the World Expo 2015 in Milan, and also as we reflect on the future of the Expo tradition and the future of culture in general. Please come back for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.